I think we can start. So my name is Crystel Rynne. I am the CEO here at HRLocker. And in today's webinar, we'll be going through the gender pay gap reporting. And I suppose, first of all, what it is, what you need to report on, and also how you can then take those reports outside of out of HRLocker into your data. Excuse me. As always, we have question and answer section open. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions at all, please drop the questions there. I'll try to answer as many as I can. And if I can't answer them, I'll try to get back to them afterwards. So I suppose the gender pay gap has been quite topical over the last few years in terms of the actual report. And it came out, I suppose, this year because it is now for companies over 50 employees in Ireland who will have to report on it. So what does that mean for you if you have a company of over 50 employees? It means that you are going to have to take the date and time, June 2025, and look at the previous 12 months to that and do a report on that in November 2025. At this moment in time, there's no government portal that is available. However, there will be in time. So right now the guidance is to put it up on your website and have it available for the next 3 years. To make life difficult for you, there are 16 calculations that need to be done on everybody who's on your payroll, regardless of if they're full-time, part-time, or casual workers. Everybody is counted in the report. I think the important thing to remember around the gender pay gap report is that it's not about getting to a zero gender pay gap. It is about reviewing your numbers, finding where you are in terms of your actual gap that you have, and understanding, I suppose, the explanation as to why you have a gap to begin with. So the narrative around your report, I think, is equally as important as the actual data that you're giving as well. What do you do with the report after that? You publish it on your website and it has to remain there for the next 3 years. The government are setting up an online system where companies will officially submit their gender pay gap report, but it isn't actually accessible at the moment. But there are websites like paygap.ie, which is an independent platform that you can go in and submit your gender pay gap there. I think a number of companies, and again, love to hear your feedback on this, are quite nervous about reporting their figure or their pay gap. But I think it's important to review the data, understand why you're there. There are a number of really good companies that have published their gender pay gap over the last few years. And I would definitely suggest go and look at these, see what way you'd like to kind of have yours looking, and make sure you can kind of do a kind of a narrative around it as well. And again, the narrative really is as important as the actual the report itself. So on that very lengthy explanation, I'm just going to go through this very scary spreadsheet that, again, I'm happy to share with people. Most of these can be taken from HRLocker itself, but I'll just go through the actual calculations that you will need to report on. So the first one is the mean male hourly pay. So what is that? It's the average pay. So you need to get the average pay from the male side of it, female, the median male hourly pay, the median female hourly pay. Once you get these 4 calculations, these will start to calculate the rest of the calculations down here. For example, the one that you need to start reporting on is the mean hourly pay gap. So what is that? That's the average pay for men versus women. The median hourly pay gap, which is the middle value pay for men versus women. So why is there 2 different ones? I suppose the mean and the median sometimes can tell a very different story. So it's important that you're reporting on both. Then there's the mean bonus gap. so average bonus pay for men versus women, the median bonus gap, which is the middle value bonus pay for men versus women, bonus proportion for men and for women, so how many men get a bonus versus how many women get a bonus, the mean hourly pay gap, so this is for your part-time employees, and the median for your part-time employees, the mean hourly pay gap, which is again for your temporary employees from an hourly perspective, and I'm sure you guessed it, there's a median there as well. Then there's the 4 in terms of your pay quartiles, which we'll show you. So there is the lower quartiles and the middle quartiles and the upper quartiles. So these are basically the lowest quartile will be the lowest paid group, lower middle, obviously the middle group, upper middle, and then the highest paid group. And then there is the an overall calculation for hourly that includes benefits like share options and things like that. So there will be 16 calculations that you will have to make, which is a lot, but also at the end of it, you will hopefully get a lovely report that I will just going to show you the HRLocker one quickly. That I should have had ready. My apologies. So, for example, and I'm happy to share this with everybody here as well. So this is our own gender pay gap report that we've done. So I suppose what our commitment is to pay equity. So we are committing to achieve a neutral gender pay gap by 2027. That's just our own one. That's important for yourselves to figure out what you'd like it to be. These are all our calculations in terms of where, I suppose, what we have strategically done here in HRLocker is we are reporting from, we did it for June 2024, which is for last year, but we are, because we made such progress, we put in January 2025, that's just something that we've decided to do. So you can see here all the differences between the calculations. Here's your upper and lower middle quartile. This is an optional, but obviously we've made a lot of progress last year. So we've been able to reduce from 11.5% to 5.9%. So there are things that I wanted to put into the pay gap report to show that in June 2024, we noticed that there was a pay gap issue and we addressed it, and we are still in the progress of addressing it. See that these are the things that we've done as actions to address the gender pay gap. So, for example, we've looked at salary benchmarking. We now pay maternity, adoptive, and paternity leave benefits. So, kind of trying to balance the discrepancy for male and female. Really looking at mentorship programs and sponsorship programs. One of the things we noticed was our sales team is actually, I was going to say predominantly male, but it's actually all male. So there was quite a gap between bonuses and commissions, specifically because obviously it was a fully male dominated team. So we've done some active recruitment to kind of change that balance, and also around leadership roles as well. These are our next steps that we'd like to commit to, and where we've published it as well. So again, there are some really nice reports that you can find online. Obviously, I'm happy to share ours with everybody here. The On Post one actually is a very good one as well. And so I suppose before you need to actually report on the actual report, what I would say is have a look at other companies who've actually reported on over the last few years, and kind of decide on what template you like. What approach you'd like as well, I suppose, but the main thing is to get the calculations. The other thing I think is really important is that most companies are going to have a gender pay gap, and for the companies that don't, I think that is testament. If you do, a lot of the time it's really important to look at your narrative to understand why there is a gender pay gap. It could be because you're working in a male-dominated workforce. So putting in initiatives around actually recruitment could change that. So that narrative is really important. Okay. How do you get all those specific calculations? Hopefully here at HRLocker, we can help you with that. So the main thing to remember is that I suppose we can only report out on the data that's actually in the system. So there's a couple of, I suppose, areas that needs to make sure that you've actually completed to get the correct data out. So the gender pay gap is in your report section, and it's in employees over here. In your reports, if you scroll down, there's two different I suppose, a report there that you can look at. But this gender pay gap one here, I'm just going to zoom in on it there for you. This is the main one where you're going to get your information from. So if you remember when we looked at the different calculations that you need to report out on. All right. So when we're looking at the different calculations that we need to report out on, for example, if you're looking at the hourly wage workers, you can look here at the per hour people and look at the absolute or the percentage or the average or the median. We were talking about the average and the median, so that's really important. And the overall. So the areas right now that you need to be reporting on is your employees in Ireland. So it's important that when you're setting up your employees that you are putting in their country of residence. You are filling, we can only obviously report out if people's salary information is correctly put in, their employment type, and also that they're in the correct office, department, and team. And obviously as well, that their gender is selected within the system. There has been a lot of talk around I suppose this gender pay gap is only reporting out on male and female. That's what the legislative requirement is at the moment. So there is no other option to report out on anything, any other genders that you may have within the company. But I suppose it is your report at the end of the day. So legally, you don't have to report on that. Right now, it is within the realms of male and female. But if it is something that you'd like to include in your report, you may have other people who would like to be to be represented in the report. That is up to you to put that into your narrative as well. So if it is something that you'd like to include, that is up to yourselves. So, but it will be in addition to the 16 mandatory fields that you have to put in. So before we go in this report, what I'm going to go in is go into the directory over here and just go into an employee to show you exactly the fields that you need to have filled out for us to be able to, I suppose, for you to be able to get a good understanding that the information that you're reporting out on is correct. Okay, so I just select Adam Adams, this employee here in the system. Okay, so I need to make sure, first of all, from the length of service date, that his start date is correct. I need to make sure that his office is correct as well. You can report again for yourselves. It's quite interesting to report on different teams as well. So if you'd like to report on maybe the sales team or the marketing team, again, you don't have, that isn't a legal requirement from the actual figure, but it is important, I suppose, for yourselves to understand, is it perhaps marketing who's getting paid more than sales, or sales, whichever it is. So sometimes that's an interesting one to put in there, because you can report on that as well. So I would encourage you to use the teams. So the next section here is personal, and this is where an employee can come in and put male, female, undefined. If it's undefined, it's not represented in the gender pay gap report. So if somebody wishes to be, I suppose, represented in the gender pay gap report and any of those calculations, male or female, needs to be selected here. Okay. Excuse me. The next section here is the terms of employment, and this will decide. Remember, when we were talking about the different calculations, you're going to be reporting out on people who are on full-time contracts or part-time contracts. People are getting paid hourly. So again, important to be putting in the correct employment type. So people who are on fixed-term or full-term contracts. Again, the employee type. So what does this mean? It means that, for example, if you have agency workers that are not direct employees, they would be indirect, and they wouldn't be considered for the gender pay gap because they're not on your payroll. So make sure you're selecting the correct employee type. Okay, your full-time equivalent. So this is important. The report takes this calculation. So say, for example, if somebody is on full-time, obviously that's a 1. If they count as 1. If somebody is only working 20 and 40 hours, then their full-time equivalent is 0.5. Okay? Again, important to be putting that in as well. The comps and bends side of things, important because it's going to again their bonus as well. So I'm sure to be putting in their benefits and bonuses here as well. So it'll take all that information into the actual report. Okay, and salary example is a really, really important one because that is sorry, just 1 second.
Church. You're not broken.
Yeah. Okay, so then if we make sure you're putting in your actual salaries, I'm just going to put add here. When you're putting in your salary again, when this comes into your per hour reporting, the hourly pay gap, then you're going to be putting in your hour, whether somebody's paid per hour per year. So again, important to be putting that in here as well. So I think the main thing to remember in terms of the engine actually powering the report is the information that you have in the system. So if you don't have the salary information in the system, or you don't have the full-time equivalent in the system, it's not going to bring the information correct. So you need to make sure you're filling out all the information across the system to make sure that that the report that you're giving out is accurate. So once you have all that information correct, we're going to go back here to the report side. There we go. Okay, the report here is in the employees section. Okay, and it's in the report over here. Yeah, and the two that you're going to be looking at here. So let's zoom in on this gender pay gap. So for companies who are going to be reporting this year, when you come to the report, you'll be selecting a date in June 2025. So that's just choose and select the first. Right now, we're going to be doing it for all offices, all departments, all team, and country of residence. She's selecting Ireland here. We're going to be doing it for per hourly workers. Okay. And then here, if you want to, you can start looking at your full-time or your casual workers to have a look at the difference here. When you start to look at, so that'll get each one of those calculations for you. Okay. Then when you look at the quartiles, and so these pay quartiles are your lowest paid group, your lower middle paid group, your upper middle paid group, and your highest middle paid. Then to look at the different quartiles here. And this gives a very different view, I suppose. So you'll see here that right now there's upper middle paid quartiles 31.49 comparison to 42.31. In regards to male versus female, the orange is women, gray is men. So we were pretty even, kind of. So here you would say that if I'm reading this in the lower middle between male and female is pretty equal. Lower middle hourly pay quartile, pretty even between male and female. As we start to go up to the upper middle, we start to see a difference that it's more male dominated. And on the highest page, we see that there's a significant difference here between male and female, that there's male dominated there as well. So you'll go through each one of these to go through, get each one of your calculations, and then you're going to build a report. Okay. Well, once you start to get all this information, again, it's a bit of a laborious process. I'm going to send you the 16 calculations that you make, that you need to make, and you will come in here, set it up into your employment types to make sure you get your full-time versus your hourly. Then you'll go through to get your average versus your median. Then you'll go through to get your quartiles and get your full calculations here. And then you'll see the difference in absolute percentage. Go through each one of those. That'll give you your high level. Where I think you can get for your report, where you can start to build a narrative is, for example, around the teams. So, for example, if you just look at sales, it might start to look very different. So, that was a good. Yes, so when you start to look at these, they might start to look a little bit different in regards to the team. So you can start to see, for example, our own side of it was that sales team was heavily male dominated. And because that is commission based and bonus driven, we do have a gap between bonuses, a huge male female gap between bonuses, but it is because of a male sales driven team. In technology sector that we're in as well. Most of, I suppose it's also male driven, male dominated in terms of developers as well. So you can see that there's a discrepancy there. If you're working in construction, you're more than likely in some jobs going to be male dominated. So that's why I like the teams, to put people in teams to be able to see, okay, so which teams do we actually need to start to work on? Because when you look at it in regards to saying, oh goodness, how do we look at having an entire gender balance across an entire company? You need to probably dig a little bit deeper than that to go through, okay, well, which actual sectors within our company do we actually need to work on? For example, an obvious one is from a leadership team. Is that male dominated or female dominated maybe? How do we get a balance? So again, you can be looking at the different teams here to put in your SMT team to see what the balance is there. You can your marketing, sales, a lot of the time in the HR world that we live in, HR may be female dominated, marketing maybe female dominated. So again, it isn't all just about being male dominated in areas. It's also about if there is I suppose, an area where there's maybe a bit of an imbalance. That's really what you're looking for, and seeing can you get that neutral balance between all the different areas within your company. And sometimes it's just not possible. So that's really important in your narrative to put in there to say that, we're not actively trying to just hire men. That's just the industry that we work in. So that's where I suppose your narrative comes in regards to saying, well, we understand that this is an area where we work in a very male-dominated area in the industry, but we have we work with, for example, there's I think it's called I Wish, who go into different schools to show them how girls can go into STEM or things like that. So you can be supporting those kind of initiatives throughout. It doesn't mean that they are doesn't have to have all the answers today. Basically, it is around the narrative. Just having a look at the questions here. So is it possible to share a link to the Excel file from the start of the call? Absolutely. So I will send everybody a link to the actual Excel document. And again, it is a step-by-step process. Once you do it once, you're going to be able to figure out what exactly you're looking at. That Excel spreadsheet will give you, I suppose, a top line figure from throughout the company. Which will give you the legislative requirement. What I would say is go a little bit further than that and start to look individually at your teams as well. So another question here, should any employees be excluded from the report, and should any elements of an employee's pay be excluded from the report? So in terms of so when you do your when you pick your date, if there are people who have been employed after June 2025, people will be naturally excluded from that. So it is that 12-month date range. So it'll be from June 2024 to June 25. That's the bit that you're going to be reporting on. So you must include all people within that 12 months who are on payroll, and that is full-time, part-time, casual, or temporary employees. You should not include contractors or freelancers as they're not on payroll. Employees who are on 0-hour contracts if you have them, or on unpaid leave for the entire period. So maybe, for example, if somebody's on long-term sick, they shouldn't be included. Things that you have to include, so pay that must be included, is your base salary or your hourly wage, any allowances that they get. So car allowance, shift allowance, location allowance, and of hours allowance, anything like that needs to be included. Any bonuses, any overtime pay, and any benefit in kind. So that's really important as well. So if there's any stock options, company cars, anything like that needs to be included in as well. Pay that should be excluded is expenses. So in travel and reimbursements, that should not be included. Pension contributions not included for some reason. Redundancy payments. So for example, if there was an employee who was there in that 12-month period, let's say a €20,000 redundancy in that period, that payment is not included. And maternity pay as well, but only excluded if they were on reduced pay for the full period. So, and obviously employees from Ireland. Okay, that answers your question, but I'll give the list basically after that has to be included. For the comps and bends, can we show how the benefit and kinds are captured in the system? Yeah, Laura, I'll show that in a second. If somebody is on a basic monthly pay and monthly commission, how do we reflect that in the salary section? So is that within HRLocker? So if I go into the directory here, to make sure I've got your question. If someone's on a basic monthly pay and monthly commission, how do you set up? If we go here into compliments. Okay. So they're on the basic monthly. So if they add here, I'm going to add their salary here, put it into pay frequency per month. Okay. So they get paid per month, but it's basic per month. So let's presume they're getting paid €5,000 per month. Okay. Their effective date. Today's date. Okay. Sorry, doing that in a very complicated way. Okay, what's their date there? Okay, so that's the per month basis, and then if they're going to be putting a bonus, okay, you can put in their bonus, and you can either put in that it's I suppose paid the date that it's paid from, which is probably better off to put in from here. It's the effective date. So you're going to be putting in the effective date. You could put in the full 12 months and we'll divide it by 12. Okay. The monthly commission base. So yeah, so I would be putting it into the bonus earned here. Okay. And just put in your 12 months, your 12 payments here then for that. So there's another question here. Could you clarify if long-term sick should be included in the pay report? I've previously been advised. So yes, they should be included in the headcount. They're still technically employed within that 12-month period. If they are, I suppose it depends if you're paying them or not. So if you are not paying them anything, then they're excluded from the pay gap calculation. So they're still included in the overall headcount. But if you're not paying them, there's nothing to report. But if they're receiving any kind of pay from you, then that needs to be included. So pay calculations only include employees who kind of receive pay in that period. If that makes sense. Okay. Is the requirement to look at the pay gap on a specific date or the gap over the period? So you select, so June is going to be the date that you select a date in June 2025 that will look at the last 12 months. Okay, so the hourly pay gap calculations will be kind of, let's say, take the 30th of June 2025, and the bonus pay gap will look at the last 12-month period. So you pick a date in June and you look back at the last 12 months. So that's the it'll take, I suppose, when you look at the average, it asks you to show the difference between sometimes it'll show you the average or the mean. So you need to report on it both. And then how do you account for joiners and leavers? So it's anybody who is paid within that period. So within that 12-month period, if, for example, you only have somebody who's only worked 2 months of that 12-month period, it's not going to show that they were underpaid because they're only 2 months. They're going to look at that person still has technically an annual salary. So it's not looking at your pay slips, it's looking at in terms of the actual salary that they were on during that period of time. That makes sense. How do you send this report to the revenue? So as of this minute, in Ireland, there is no portal within revenue to upload it. So there is no requirement to send the gender pay gap report to Revenue Commission. However, you are required to have it accessible on your website for the next to both employees and the public for at least 3 years. The government portal in the UK will certainly send it on to you. And if you have all your salaries set as annual in HRLocker, will this work for the report? Yes. So it'll just take it, and if everybody's on annual, you need to make sure that you're putting in your FTE. So I'll go to your terms of employment here. Just make sure that you're putting in the full-time equivalent. And then also when you're I suppose when you're reporting on your the person's salary could be, let's say, 40,000 euros a year, that they're only part-time. When you're doing your report, just make sure that when you select part-time, that could be that. Just make sure I've got all the questions here. Is the date from the 1st of July 2024 to the 30th of June if a week overlaps the date rate? Staff paid weekly, can you just prorata that week? Yeah, so I think you're really just looking at what their salary is during that period. So say, so if it's the 1st of July to 2025, so you will be giving the report in December 2025. Okay, your report will be from June 2025, 12 months. You'll calculate the whole 12 months. So if an employee is paid weekly and their pay period overlaps the 30th of June, you don't prorata, you just use the full week's pay. Okay, so if, for example, the 30th of June maybe is 3 days of that payroll, you just take the whole week. You don't only take 3 days. So you take the whole week's pay, even if a part of it is in July. Okay, that makes sense. On your snap date, how do you save the information from HRLocker? So the information in HRLocker is always available. So you'll go into HRLocker, go into your employees, your reports, and you'll get the data from here. So I'll show you actually the, so I suppose you don't save it each time. You'll have to come in here and kind of calculate it each time. So you'll get the calculation and then you'll put it into the report. So again, I'll show you our report here. Okay. So I've gone into ours and I've just taken each of the numbers and put in the report for each calculation that we've done. And unfortunately, just written out the report. And then you're putting in your narrative as well. Do we need to carry this out every year, or do we need to do it in 3 years again? So unfortunately, the answer is quite short. It is an annual requirement. So companies who meet the threshold, which is 50 or more employees, will have to do it every year. I think this isn't a requirement, but I think it's good practice is that you're comparing each year to make sure that you've done some progress, to show that if that makes sense. So Let's make sure I've got all the questions here. Do you have to include seasonal staff? If they're during that period, then yes. What about people who've left? Again, if they've worked within that period, then yes, they're included in the report. So any direct employee who was on your payroll 12-month period are included in the report. Okay. And you know what? That's actually even if you look at the narrative around, say, seasonal employees, if that then starts to they're good to perhaps put into a team that you can report out on separately. They still go into the main report, but the narrative might be different for the seasonal employees. Perhaps it could be male dominated or female dominated, whichever it is, and to say that perhaps the reason why there's quite a significant gender pay gap in the lower quartile is because it's female orientated or something like that. So again, these things are important to understand why the data looks like that. Okay. So what we'll do after this is recorded, and Nikki will send out all the information. She'll send out a copy of her own gender pay gap report. Please have a look at it. I would suggest there's a couple of them. There's a couple who really good reports out there as well. The Unpassed report, I think, is really good. They've done some huge work there as well. And I'll also send on the spreadsheet as well, just to give an understanding of all the information that you actually have to do, and also the user guide of how to get the information out of HRLocker. This probably will require a little bit of work. It is the first time that you're doing the report. Really happy to talk to anybody in regards to, I suppose, how they how they're approaching it. It's interesting conversations to have with people, what your narrative is around, what your company wants to stand for, and also, I suppose, where do you want to go to is really important. So I would, definitely share anything, and happy to have a discussion with anybody as well. Any feedback on our own report would be welcome as well. I'm just going to ask them one last question before you go, because I think it's important, is if your employee numbers are, for example, above 50 employees this year, but next year we're below 50, is there still a requirement to report? There isn't, but I would say that it's probably best practice to do the report. If you've done it once, I think the first time is probably the hardest time to do it. So I think that you can certainly look at, I suppose, keep going to make sure that you're actually impacting the gender pay gap within your own company. I suppose it depends what way you look at it. Is this a legislative requirement, or is it something that you're actually trying to achieve in your company, or just to give you really good insight into your company? For example, I had never thought about that. Our entire sales team are male. Never occurred to me until we looked at it and went, oh goodness, I didn't realize that it was so male dominated. In fact, male dominated being that there is not one female salesperson. Wasn't designed like that. It just is. So something that we be aware of. Look and see, can we do some diversity within the team? So it's an interesting way to figure out what's going on in your company, which is a very lengthy way of saying that I would recommend that you do it the year after, even if you're just under the 50. Okay, so sorry, I could probably keep answering these questions. Is to be clear, if you have a turnover of staff, do you find out their average pay of the number of weeks they worked, as opposed to taking their total pay and dividing by 52 as per the legislation suggests? So you must calculate the average hourly pay based on the actual period the employee worked, not automatically divide by 52. So employees who joined or left during the 12-month period use their actual pay for the period they worked, divide by the total hours that they've worked in that period. Don't assume that they've worked the full 52 weeks if they weren't employed for the full year. So I suppose if we look at what the legislation says, it says the total pay should be divided by the actual number of weeks worked, not automatically by 52 weeks. If an employee only worked 10 weeks, you calculate their average over those 10 weeks, not across the full year. So if somebody's worked part-time for 2 months and they've only worked 10,000 euros, you're going to take that 10,000 euros and divide it by the 3 months that they've worked, not the 12 months or the 52 weeks. So I suppose make sure if you're doing that, I suppose if you were to take a part-time employee or a seasonal employee and divide it over 52 weeks, probably going to give you an unfairly sort of distorted pay gap. So yeah, so use their actual pay for the period worked, divide the actual hours worked, not the 52 weeks. And it applies to joiners, leavers, and part-time employees during that period. I can send you a bit more on that, maybe just to create the exact. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Hope that was helpful. I'll send everything to you. And again, please come back and happy to answer any questions, and get any feedback from our own report would be welcome as well. So thank you, everybody, and take care.